Alright, last two honorable mentions. Tank Girl.
Again, we haven't read the comic book material,
yes.
but I mean, it's a B-rated classic.
Yes.
I enjoyed it.
It's a fun movie.
It's campy, it's stupid, but, I enjoyed it.
Exactly. As far as camp goes, you could definitely tell they took the camp from the comic book, because the comic book is also very campy. It's more of the serious stuff that we aren't certain of to even comment on.
Exactly.
And lastly, this is going to make people laugh, but I will defend it like crazy. I don't care. Is Barbed Wire.
I know you love Barbed Wire.
I do. I love Barbed Wire, the movie with Pamela Anderson. I don't know why. I really don't. Yeah, I think that's why. I mean, I have the Barbed Wire Omnibus graphic novel here. I still have not read it yet. God, I have a lot of things I need to read, okay?
You know what it is, too? Barbed Wire came out around that Tank Girl time when they were doing the movie releases of comic books, but for some reason they were making them campy. Because they felt like, okay, they're comic books, so they should be fun and lighthearted. So the formula to making a comic book movie back then was to make them campy.
Yeah.
And everything like that, Look at the direction they took the Batman movies. After Keaton left, they went camp.
Yeah.
And everything like that. All the her movies all of a sudden became very, very campy.
Not only that, I mean, personally for me, at the time when Barbed Wire came out, it was that 90s, feel.
Rock and music.
Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And, to me, that's what Barbed Wire was. So I just gravitated towards it because of that.
It was also during that time period where a lot of movies aren't like that now. With Guardians of the Galaxy has caused this resurgence. But it was that time period where movies were really driven by their soundtracks.
Yes.
Tank Girl had an amazing soundtrack.
As did Barbed Wire, yes.
Barbed Wire had an amazing soundtrack.
Yes.
The Crow, which we will be getting, had an amazing soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of movies aren't based off of their soundtracks now, but Guardians of the Galaxy is starting to kind of re-push that again. But, it was that time where the soundtrack kind of coincided with the movie.
Well, speaking of which, then, let's get back into the realness of this. Let's talk about The Crow.
Fantastic.
Both. Okay,
both
there you go.
Both as a standalone. The book, took forever to finally come together. For those of you that know the history of the Crow series, it actually went through 3 publications, I believe, before it finally completed itself over the course of 10 years. Because James O'Barr wrote it after losing his fiancée/wife tragically to a car crash, which spawned and inspired this story. And everything like that. And he started writing it, and then he fell off with the publication company he was with. Then he got with another publication company, but to keep everybody on track, he started from issue 1 again, and then the same thing happened, and finally, it was 10 years later, everything got completed. Now, there were differences again. Certain things that sometimes I guess they feel work on in black and white don't work on screen. Eric Draven in the books wasn't in a band.
Yeah,
he wasn't a rock star. He was a ballet dancer. Him and his girlfriend were ballet dancers. And they go out for a picnic, and of course, tragedy befalls them by way of T-Bird and his gang, who shoot him and do horrible things to his girlfriend before doing what they do to her and everything like that. Now they took that portion, they did translate a lot of it to the movie, and a lot of the movie they did follow the book.
Yes.
In terms of panel, look, and stylings. The whole pawn shop part is generally, that's there. That whole pawn shop scene is particularly is there. Now, where the movie starts to stray is what keeps the character of Brandon Lee's alive is the power and the mysticism of the Crow.
Yes.
The book is a totally different thing. It's taken by, 1, drugs. A lot of drugs, but also 2, because he's so filled with rage and vengeance, as he's taking that shootout scene shirtless, he goes, it's not death if you don't accept it. He's just not willing to accept death until he's completed what he's there to do. And it's not the Crow is a mental image, as well as the undead cowboy. There's a lot of psychological things going on in the book that they were going to include in the movie, because they did film the undead cowboy. I forgot what actor. It was a famous actor too, and they just completely put it on the cutting room floor. And there's a lot of it that fell on the cutting room floor because it didn't work for the the path that we're going to finally take the movie. The book, by far, definitely greater because, again, it's a grittier, follows a much deeper story, and all that stuff, especially with the little girl, all that stuff. But the movie itself also, cult favorite, timeless piece now as well, on its own. So, it's hard to say which is better simply because they're, in terms of their mediums, they're both classics in their mediums. So I'm going to say a tie.
That's fine. I can't disagree with anything that you've said. Anything at all. I mean, and not only that, but the way that they took the Crow movie was just so perfectly suited for that time period. Like, to the point where it has almost become a time period piece. You know, that was the point of, 90s grunge is dying, and, dare I even say, the goth resurgence was coming, but it was, like, right in that middle, where it was all still, very gritty and very dark, and in almost a sense, that time where you're finding yourself, and it's just, again, it's become such a time period piece that, well, obviously a remake of it just wouldn't be the same because it's so stuck in that time period, but it's just, as a completely different medium from the book, it's perfect. It's just a perfect balance, even though there are such big differences. They're both beautiful pieces of work.
And I'll even go as far as to say, not for nothing, The Crow was the first one, I think, that opened the doorway, that broke loose. Because remember, we were just saying only a little while ago how superhero movies were made very camp and very hokey and funny. Crow came out after that and was the first one that says, no, we can take a superhero movie and we can get violent and we can get nasty and we can make it real. And I think without the success of The Crow, we wouldn't have seen a Watchmen, a Punisher, or anything like that, because that opened the doorways. Or a Blade. Like, everybody always says, oh, Blade is the unsung hero of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And yes, it is, but I don't think we would have had a Blade without a Crow.
Agreed. I agree.
Because The Crow was the first... It's technically a superhero movie. At the end of the day, it's technically. Or a graphic novel. It's the first graphic novel that said, we can take this genre and we can get adult.
Yeah.
We can get dark. We can cover adult themes like drugs and murder and rape and all sorts of things like that. We can take those things and we can turn it around. Because, moving on to Blade, Blade's mother was attacked, which caused his birthing.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So, I think The Crow has a lot to do with opening that doorway to saying, yes, we can have our superhero movies, but we can also have our movies that are going to touch on much, much more serious tones.
Yes.
And everything like that.
I agree. I do want to mention one thing that Doug brought up regarding the sequel comic books to The Crow. The only movie in the Crow franchise that was not a comic book was The Crow City of Angels.
Yeah.
That one was actually written and penned by people in Hollywood.
Terrible.
The Crow Salvation, I forgot what the other ones were, but there was The Crow Salvation, and then there was the other one with Edward Furlong. Those two movies were actually Crow, one was a Crow comic book, and one was a Crow book, because they started making book adaptations as well.
Salvation was unsung, though.
I think Salvation
unsung. Was actually really good.
The one with Kirsten Dunst.
Yes, I thought Salvation was actually good.
You've never seen it?
The one with Eddie Furlong, that one was terrible.
Yes.
That one, I just...
that one could have been good.
If it wasn't him.
If it wasn't him, and if Tara Reid wasn't in it either.
Yeah. No, seriously.
Yeah. Because David Boreanaz is in it, and he was good.
They were trying to, they were trying to use what last little hope they had left of Edward Furlong's, star power, which by then it had already dwindled. Nobody cared, and he was such a waste at that point already. And he was so annoying, and nobody believed. No. It was you took a great story, and you casted it all completely wrong.
Absolutely, yes.
But Salvation, I thought, was fantastic.
The one I always wanted to see, but they never made... Wicked Prayer. Thank you, Jose. Wicked Prayer is what it was called. The one I always wanted to see, I believe... was Flesh and Blood. It was the first Crow graphic novel that had a female Crow, and the subject matter basically revolved around her, I believe, being involved in a building explosion, and she was pregnant, and it is the coming back in revenge for her unborn child that serves the purpose for her coming back. I would have loved to have seen that as a movie.
Well, given the big women's resurgence now, it could be cool, but of course, obviously, they're still focusing on making that Crow movie, but I don't think... It doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Let's see. We can't really... Let's switch things up here. Go a little cartoony. The Killing Joke.
Oh, you've got a lot to say on this one already as it is.
I see Spike has something to say, though. He's itching.
Yeah.
Go!
The comic, obviously...
It's a work of art. It's
absolutely the best damn comic I've ever read.
Falls, again,
yeah.
Not even the top 10, probably top 3 books, if you've not read it, have to read.
Yeah.
Yes. Then, when you come to the film, the second half, where they do follow the book, that's wonderfully made from the book. Perfect.
It's the first half.
The first half was like a what the fuck moment, pretty much. Like,
what did you do here?
Yeah, like, what? I don't understand. What was the whole point of the whole Batgirl romance?
It was unnecessary to the story.
Yeah, 'cause they tried to make the whole, like, her being shot in paralyzed more dramatic, but there was no need for it.
They tried to give it a more emotional connection. Yeah. I could see why they were trying to do it, but it didn't need to be done.
Yeah.
Again, also we're talking about a movie, for the majority of people watching The Killing Joke, these are obviously people that have read the book. And they were making it in this. They added that in the sense where, well, maybe, you know, there's people that haven't read the book, but the problem is, DC animated movies are usually more so picked up by comic book readers. So again, it was a route that was not it wasn't a risk that shouldn't. I'm not even calling it a necessity for the sake of general viewers. It was just a route they shouldn't have taken.
See, the way I see it, I hate having to go this route with it because I'm so different, but for me, what that whole thing made it feel like Batgirl was just the damsel in distress.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is not who Batgirl is at all. And it just, like, you know, the pining and then the feelings, it's like that. It's kind of like almost the same thing that people say about Game of Thrones. Or why did she have to get raped in order for the plot to continue? It felt like that, where it's like, why did you have to put her in that position and make her, like,
vulnerable?
Well, yeah, I mean, she was already a victim. But the thing is that's what people fail to realize. In The Killing Joke, yes, she was, you know, Joker's victim, but she was never a victim.
Exactly.
Because she rose above it after all of that. She used that. So she was never really a victim. And in creating that relationship, they basically changed who she was in a way. Like, they really literally changed everything Barbara Gordon was about. And that's what bothers me the most. You didn't just change scenes for a graphic novel. You literally went and changed an entire character for no reason.
Right. Agree.
Thank you.
Absolutely agree.
Next.
Next.
All right. We are going to only do one special non-movie here, per the request of Spike, and I'm allowing this one because eventually
of how broad it is.
Yes, and eventually we will do a separate show that deals with comic book adaptation TV shows. However, right now this is the only one worth honorable mention, and that is The Walking Dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speak on this.
Okay. Obviously, I would say the books are better because they came out first, and they're more like how should I put this? Like, well.
Still, I think it's more so still able to go that further route that they still can't put on TV yet.
Yes, and like I said, when the show came out, like they did start off like following the book, but then like near the end of the season, they started doing some changes, and then there was like some victims staying alive when they should have been dead, or dying when they should, like a lot earlier than they should have. And at first that did piss me off because you're messing up the whole timeline. But then also like I kind of in a way got over it and accepted the fact that there's two different things. But in a way, like I would say the books were definitely